Hi, everybody. My name is Ian Jacobs. Good to see all of you here. A moment ago, Philippe mentioned that many on the technical staff play also a role in strategy. And so today I'd like to talk to you about some recent discussions we've been having as part of the strategy team about how really to do a better job of bringing large strategic topics into W3C. So this happens from time to time, things like mobile, cloud computing, decentralization. These are topics that we perceive as beginning to transform society, and the big question is, how do we deal with that within the W3C? How do we get our hands around topics that are quickly moving, where we may not have all of the stakeholders at the table that need to be there to answer these questions, where we may not yet have a shared understanding or even an understanding of the topic, whether it's being overly hyped, and how do we bring those conversations into W3C? And so a goal of this session is to solicit your comments on this proposal for a new, more systematic and strategic approach for managing and bringing into W3C these big topics, often with significant strategic implications and understanding their impact on the web. So as people here have already mentioned, the staff plays a role and has historically played a role in helping drive the strategy within the web consortium or helping manage the strategy in some cases. And so I've listed on this slide a number of tools that we have used in an ad hoc fashion. So many of you, I won't go through them in detail, but this goes way back. Team submissions were among the earliest things that the staff did back in the 90s for bringing new ideas into the consortium. We've had initiatives when we've perceived important topics, so you may remember the Mobile Web Initiative. We've had funded projects, meaning principally driven through external funds instead of membership funds, notably on accessibility. Jeff Jaffe introduced the Headlights projects, which gave the staff an opportunity to sort of step out of their daily work and try to tackle bigger topics. So for example, I worked on a thing that became community groups, then payments was another issue, and there were a whole other set of ideas through Headlights. And we've discussed this within the advisory committee on a number of occasions. How do we onboard work? We're going to have more of those discussions today and tomorrow. Workshops clearly have played an important role. And these are all individual pieces of the larger topic of how do we take a more strategic approach for handling these big topics. So today's proposal is more or less two parts for leveraging W3C strengths and taking a more systematic approach. So the first piece that we propose is to put ethical principles at the fore. So the TAG has done tremendous work here. The AB also in their vision document is taking up this mantle of taking a strategic approach to doing work and prioritizing work. What is so helpful in the W3C context and why I call this an asset of the organization is that we have long-standing horizontal activities that accessibility, privacy, security, and internationalization, and some emerging ones as well in, for example, sustainability, where it is critical and built into our process to do reviews of specifications along these axes and increasingly getting charter reviews. And the question here is, how can we expand the use of this expertise into more and earlier strategic conversations about big topics? So that's piece one. The second piece is similar. We are very used to having deep technical conversations within the consortium, and a lot of times we jump right into ideas for solutions to problems, and we have not stepped back to take a more strategic approach. And so what we are proposing here is that we ground in the staff, which has a history of doing and leading some of these strategic initiatives to help the consortium overall take a more strategic approach and therefore host and nurture these more strategic conversations. So what does this mean? How would we do this? So we think of this in about 3 steps. The first is the staff on an ongoing basis would be doing more to monitor signals of events with potential strategic importance. So we do some of that today. We would focus some of our efforts to do that on a more systematic basis, and then to publish a framing document that would be the deliverable of sort of step 1. And so recently you got email about an AI and the web strategic framing document that Dom wrote, and so today you're going to hear Dom talk about this with Leonie in more detail. And this is a piece of this puzzle. How are we going to do this more strategically? We're going to start with a framing document from the staff. Then the staff will continue to do work to help build shared understanding of the topic and improve this framing document, because it's critical that we develop a shared narrative. What does AI mean for the web? Are we all talking about the same set of problems? Are we missing anything? And so the staff will help facilitate these conversations, do outreach within the consortium and also outside the consortium to bring in voices and improve the framing document. At some point, we'll perceive that there will be opportunities for incubation and standardization, and although this particular proposal is not about the work that will then be done, it's about getting to the point where we now have a shared understanding of what work we should be doing to address the main points that the community has recognized as important. So let's take AI and the web as an example. We have been monitoring and, in fact, acting on signals of the importance of AI to the web for at least 6 years. And so on this slide, there's a list of things that have happened, both community groups, the launch of a working group, and interestingly, the Web Machine Learning Working Group has published a document called Ethical Principles for Web Machine Learning. So that's exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about. We want to ground this in ethical principles to make sure that we are prioritizing the work that we do and making sure that the impact on people is taken into account first, and therefore increasing our chances of impact and prioritizing what's most important. So after these many years, here's a quickie slide of what these 3 steps would look like for this topic. So we've been monitoring signals. We've detected, obviously, that this is important. Dom published his framing document last month. I hope you had a chance to read it, and you'll hear more about it today. Step 2 is then, starting with this AC meeting, beginning to build conversations around this framing, and then for the next several months, mature them. And then step 3 would be to sort of come forward with a roadmap that says, having had all of this community conversation, here's what we think we should be working on as a consortium. And we would expect to share that around TPAC. So we hope to be in communications with you over the next few months. The questions for discussion today, and again, we can talk about this in the breakout tomorrow as well. This was a quick introduction, but we want to hear from you. Should the staff try this general approach to organizing strategic big conversations? What can we do to position the staff to do that well? And are there any other, we cited 2 strengths of the consortium, namely having a full-time staff and having a well-established set of horizontal activities. Are there other strengths of the W3C community or its culture that would improve on this proposal and increase its chances of success? Thank you very much. Again, just quick acknowledgments. I've been chatting with Dom about this, and thanks to the strategy team for enabling us to work on things like this. Thank you very much.